Hey everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to Friday Night Mike here on our Dog Nation Facebook page. My live presentation every Friday. Let me get my camera settled in here, get centered, buckle in for, 45 minutes, an hour worth of sports talk. So a week ago, I was in my living room with you. We were watching the NFL draft together, waiting for Jake Fromm to get picked on Friday night in the second or third round. It never happened. Jake, of course, did not go until the fifth round, pick number 167. On Tuesday's Ingles on the Beat show, we talked all about that, about Jake Fromm going to the Buffalo Bills and what that meant behind Josh Allen. And just seems like forever ago because there's been a lot of news since then. Hope you've been keeping up with it. We're going to talk a little bit about the name, image, likeness. They advanced that. Now, that isn't passed. It's not done. It actually isn't scheduled to take effect until the fall of 2021. There's some steps that have to take place first before the name, image, likeness goes through and these players, student athletes, start getting paid for the ability to use their likeness or their social media accounts or any businesses they may have started. So that doesn't really kick in as far as the timeline until 2021 fall. There's a couple of steps left. There's plenty of legislation left because the NCAA is asking for federal assistance so that there's one federal law over all 50 states. So it's a level playing field. So maybe California doesn't have any different rules than Texas. So you got that image going on, right? You got that issue going on. Then we have the issue of how colleges are going to get back on campus with the student athletes and what the season might look like. And what does it mean that Iowa is saying that they want to be back on campus in June? Georgia's plan is to be back on campus in July. UGAsports.com reporting some ideas for quarantining coaches and players. We'll get to that as well. I'm going to share this right now to my Facebook page because we've got all the Dog Nation audience, and it's, man, what an audience we've got at Dog Nation. We've talked about the Dog Nation family before and all the shows that we do and how much fun we have talking about all this stuff and following along. It's just been such a crazy, eventful off season like never before and hopefully like never again. I mean, this has been absolute madness. So let me type this up, get this over to my page, and see who we get for an audience. You never know. I might get some Tennessee fans. And we want the Tennessee fans in here because we want to tell them what happened. Because the big story today, I guess in my mind, the big story was it was like someone lit a match, poured gasoline on the Georgia-Tennessee rivalry, lit a match, and threw it on there. And all of a sudden now Georgia-Tennessee is blowing up. Tennessee fans, they're so fired up. They finished last season with 6 straight wins. They're so excited about that win over Indiana in the bowl game. And now their recruiting class is on fire. Tennessee's got the number 3 recruiting class. And last night, Georgia put out a video that was, here's our highlights of the 3rd straight Georgia win over Tennessee. And Tennessee fans are like, whoa, you're raining, what is this? You're raining on our parade. Well, were they or weren't they? I don't know. I do know this, though. Going back to March 23rd, Georgia had started to put out highlights of last year's game. March 23rd was the Vanderbilt, game 1. And then it was game 2 and game 3. And Notre Dame was game 4. And that was, April 18th that Georgia put that highlight out. They used that as their viral G-Day presentation. So this week was game 5, which just so happened to be the Tennessee game. Well, the Tennessee fans are going, no, that's way too much of a coincidence. Well, it's really not. So here's the question. And I was talking to Brian Rice. He's a guy who does a radio show in Knoxville. Been there a long time. And Brian said, look, I got the tip that they moved it up early. Georgia wasn't going to put the highlights out of the Tennessee game till Saturday, and they moved it up a couple days after Tennessee had gotten another 5-star recruit. And I'm just like, all right, if they did that, is that really trolling? Or is that just being smart? Or is that just trying to remind people, hey, Georgia is still Georgia? Now, had Georgia not done highlights from game 1, 2, 3, and 4 and just randomly thrown that out there, then okay, Tennessee fans, you got a case. Georgia's just dropping that on. But they had a buildup. They've done game 1 highlights, game 2, game 3, game 4. There's no way when Georgia started this idea on the Georgia football Twitter account back in March that they said, you know what? Let's time this out so that at the beginning of May, when Tennessee has a top 5 recruiting class, we can drop this highlight package. They didn't do that. I mean, Kirby Smart's a pretty smart guy, but he's not that smart. And let's give Tennessee credit. They're having a heck of but right now, and I've seen how this works because I covered Tennessee. Now I've covered all these different programs, like I told you. They all kind of have their own personality. Let me tell you, the Vols fans are ready to fight. The Vol Twitter is ready to come at anybody. They're back to attacking me on Twitter. You guys know I always bring up my Twitter problems. Like the guy that talks about his marriage problems at the bar, I talk about my Twitter problems on Friday Night Mike. And the Vol Twitter, they're telling me that I'm Toby from The Office because I pointed out, the technicality that, oh, by the way, Georgia was going to put out this highlight anyway. They don't want to know that. They would much rather it be a situation where the Georgia football account was being ugly and taking a cheap shot. That's what you want to believe if you're Tennessee. You want to believe that the world is out to get you. They're really in that circle the wagons mode. Tennessee wants to prove that they're back. They've got a lot of momentum coming from last year, winning those 6 games, beating Vanderbilt and Kentucky and Indiana. And that was big, 6 straight wins for Tennessee football. So anyway, to me, that was good. And I told Brian Rice, when we were texting back and forth about it, I said, look, I don't think, my initial reaction when I first saw it was, oh, look at this, Georgia just, but then I went back and looked and said, wait a minute. They've been putting out these highlights of every game, and this just happened to be like incredible timing to some extent, whether they moved it up 2 days or not. But, but I told Brian, I said, you know what? Who cares? It's a good thing. Let everybody get fired. Let's get fired up. Let's talk about college football. Let's talk about rivalries. Let's look forward to November 14th and when Tennessee comes to Sanford Stadium. Same weekend that the Masters is scheduled is the same weekend that Tennessee comes to Georgia for a November game. I like that game there. I know a lot of Georgia fans kind of used to Auburn being in that month. But remember, both Kirby and Gus Malzahn wanted to get rid of that Georgia-Auburn game in November. Auburn wanted to avoid having to play at Georgia and at Alabama in the month of November and every other year. And Kirby didn't want to play at Alabama and at Georgia Tech, 2 rivalry games on the road every other year. So they both kind of been wanting to get that Auburn-Georgia game moved. And then it took another dance partner, though. It took somebody else that wanted to get, and it was Fulmer. Now, Philip won't confirm this to me, but it's no secret. It had never happened before. Philip's the AD, and suddenly it happens. I do know from covering Philip that he didn't exactly like having to play Florida and Georgia that close together in the season. So this was a way for him to break that up. It was a way for Georgia and Auburn, to get their game earlier. So I like the Tennessee game in November. I think it's a great time. It may be a little chilly in Neyland Stadium when Georgia plays the return game up there. But I think when you come down to Sanford Stadium, I think November 14th, I'm going to call for a glorious night of weather. That's what I'm going to call for. Let's hope that holds up, because I think that Georgia-Tennessee rivalry is getting ripe again. Now, Florida's there. Now, Florida will tell you, hey, Tennessee's not in the conversation. This is Georgia and Florida, and then Tennessee are with the rest. That's what Buddy Martin of the Gator Bait magazine will tell you and has said on the Feinbaum. Buddy and I have talked about it. And I don't agree with that. I think Tennessee is closer to Florida than Florida does. I think it's Georgia and then a level down in Florida. To me, now Georgia's a 3-time defending East champion. I do recognize that they're reloading on offense this year and that there's some question about what type of continuity and choreography that they can get into place because they missed spring drill. So I understand why there's some doubters on the outside. Still, I was a little surprised to see Alabama as such a prohibitive favorite to win the SEC. Alabama's got a lot of questions on defense. Their defense was horrible last year. Not just not good, but horrible. And I like what Georgia has for options. And one of the things we're going to talk about, we did some bold predictions on the Dog Nation Cover 4 earlier this week. And one of my predictions was that more than one quarterback was going to start. And in some way, shape, or form, don't know how, I did mention it was possible Jamie Newman could miss a game. He missed a game last year with his shoulder. The SEC's a rough league. But also, you got Dwan Mathis and Carson back. And both of these guys, I believe, are capable. Remember now, Carson Beck was the player of the year in Florida offer. And remember, Dwan Mathis was Ohio State's quarterback of the future. So, I mean, it's not like these guys are just, nobodies. I mean, they had some big-time options. These were big recruiting wins for Georgia. I mean, for Georgia to get Dwan Mathis last minute when Fields made that transfer was absolutely huge. And it gets bigger as Dwan continues to recover. This is the month, by the way, that Dwan's going to have that MRI, and we hope he gets the complete clearance. He's been down here in Athens training. Remember that? When all this quarantining and people, he stayed here. He told his dad, I want to go to Georgia and train. I want to be around campus. And his dad said, all right, if that's where you want to be. So Dwan is all in on this. We know Beck has had a good offseason. We know Jamie Newman has had a good offseason. I believe Jamie might be in Athens now. I saw an Instagram photo that made me wonder. Now, sometimes these guys will post an old photo and you never know what they're doing, but wouldn't be surprised. So let me catch you up on some of the news. Let me introduce you to some of the things that have been reported by Dog Nation, a really good report from Anthony Dasher at UGA Sports. So I took these notes down. Okay, so here we go. I wrote this yesterday when the University of Iowa president said they plan to be on campus. His quote was, this is from the Iowa president, Bruce Harold, per Adam Rittenberg. This is what he said. June 1 is the date we're going to get back to practice, and here we go. So Iowa wants to get on campus, get their players going June 1. That makes Iowa the leader in the clubhouse, okay? Now, I don't know what's going to happen as far as COVID-19 trends and COVID-19 numbers, and you've got to put the qualifier on all this, that it's fluid, that things can change. We certainly hope there's not another spike. We're all keeping up with the worldwide pandemic. We're all trying to battle the invisible enemy. But right now, there's a lot of optimism and there's a lot of momentum for college football to take place this fall. So roll with me here. And yes, there's an asterisk to all of this. It's all qualified, but it could change at any time if there's another spike or if there's some new information. So be aware of that. So I'm not saying this is a done deal. It's not. All this is about is planning. And now that you've got planning and you got wheels turning, that makes it more likely to happen, okay? So he says that. Georgia President Jerry Moorhead says on Athens Station WGAU, quote, our expectation is at this point is that we'll have a normal football season and be able to play all our games. Certainly our hope and expectation is that we'll have fans in the stands. And we hope that we'll have our players here at some point in the month of July. So that's pretty big to hear that Jerry Moorhead is talking about Georgia being on campus. So you've got Iowa saying they're going to be there in June, and you got Jerry Moorhead, president of Georgia, saying that the Bulldogs are going to be on campus in July. Now, how does this happen? We're going to see. First things first, we know Greg Sankey was talking about this. Different ways and how is this going to be able to materialize, and how could this possibly take place in a safe manner. UGA Sports reported earlier today that the Georgia medical staff is discussing several plans, one of which involves coaches and players quarantining themselves at the Georgia Center for the Continuing Education and Hotel. So when the players and the coaches get back together on campus, they quarantine, because we all know that football, contact sport, people all up against one another, right? So how do you do that safely, right? This whole word safe is such a relative term. I don't even know what safe is anymore. Was it really safe before? Is it going to be safe now? How do we redefine safe? And so, this is going to be up to the experts to determine what is the risk, the acceptable risk level, I suppose. And there's a risk level whether you go back on campus and you're around a lot of students, or there's a risk level if you're in a state that's opened up and you're going to the mall and the coffee shop. So where is the risk level greater? At campus, you could make the argument that you've got the medical staff there and the access to the daily testing and the potential for the herd immunity if you do this quarantining together. And this was just one option that was discussed. I reached out to Greg McGarity. He said yes, he confirmed that is something that is being considered right now. So we got a peek at it. So this is one possibility. There's a lot of different possibilities that are being discussed by all these campus leaders, all these coaches, all these doctors, all these scientists, right? But how do you actually make the sausage, so to speak? How do you make it happen? So this is one idea, that you bring coaches and players back together, put them in one hotel, and you quarantine them together. Okay, so that's where, this is just the beginning, folks. Again, none of this is a done deal. These are just ideas that are being thrown out there. So I thought that was interesting. Also, earlier this week, the NCAA Oversight Committee advocates a minimum 6 weeks of preparation before the start of the 2020 season. That was in a report from Stadium's Brett McMurphy. We're kind of piecemealing it together. So we're getting all this different information going on here, right? We got Iowa saying they want to be on campus in June. You got Georgia saying they want to be on campus in July. One of the plans at Georgia that was discussed, quarantining players and coaches together. And then you've got the Oversight Committee saying you need 6 weeks. Everybody's still pointing towards Labor Day weekend for the start to the season. 6 weeks out from that would indicate, could this happen in July? I don't know. That would be 6 weeks, though. Sankey was on a Jacksonville radio station yesterday, again, the SEC Commissioner, Greg Sankey, and he said two things that jumped out at people. One, that we all heard 2 weeks ago that there was a conference call between the College Football Playoff Committee management team and Mike Prince, the vice president, right? And from that phone call, they decided, hey, before you're going to have these college football players and student athletes on campus working out, you've also got to have students. And we all went, oh my gosh, that's going to be hard, because there was a thought of, well, maybe there'll be sports but no class in session. Well, but what does that mean, right? So what Sankey said essentially was, you got to have students on campus, but maybe not all the students. Maybe not exactly business as usual, because there will be more provisions in place. There'll be more safety measures. Maybe the classes will only be half full. Maybe there'll be more spacing. Maybe there'll be more online. So it's not exactly going to be like business as usual. All 30,000 people are back on campus at Georgia or Tennessee or 50,000 Michigan State or whatever. Just classes in session, and there is some degree of normalcy, whatever the new normal is, right? So I thought that was interesting that Sankey created a little wiggle room there that, yeah, you got to have class in session, but it doesn't necessarily need to be business as usual or as we knew it, okay? So that was one thing that he said. Two, he kind of left the door open as far as what if Louisiana and Texas, for example, aren't opened up yet? What happens to the rest of the SEC? Does the rest of the SEC move forward? And he didn't really answer that. That's a tough question. The SEC wants to remain unified. They really want all 14 schools, and I almost feel like you got to have all four. Maybe you don't have to, but I guess just the purist in me thinks, they're going to work really hard to get that done, to have all 14 teams, right? Because then, at a bare minimum, you play the league schedule out and a league championship game, and you can still say, yep, that's how it worked out. But if you get into having to just totally tear up the schedule because there's only 12 instead of 14 teams, and that may happen in some other leagues. I look at the Big Ten, and I see the issues in Maryland and New Jersey, right, where, Rutgers and Maryland are at, and maybe the Big Ten goes on without those two schools. Or we look to the Pac-12, and we wonder about what's going on in California, specifically Los Angeles, where the mayor said like a week and a half ago that there may not be any, events until January. Well, what happens to USC and UCLA then? Or what if the state of California is not ready to open up, and Stanford and Cal? Now, in that scenario, I think if the entire SEC is in, then I think, you can say, okay, well, maybe you don't need to have all the conferences complete in order to play a football season. That's still the goal everybody's going to aim for. It's the driving point. But as we move forward and we try to piece this thing together and look at how it could be, to me, these are some fascinating options that are out there that I want to keep you up to date on, because I think it's pretty interesting. And it's very fluid. Remember, all this can change. Okay, so I want to be clear on that. I want to repeat that. None of this is finalized. These are all just plans. I'm sharing the ideas with you here on our Friday night show, here via Dog Nation, welcoming in all these different fans, be it from Tennessee or Florida or whoever. I see all the great comments. Some people, they want to say mean things. Some people want to say good things. Some people have different ideas. Hey, that's the point of this. It's an open forum, right? I'm opening it up. You got your shot. Take your shot. You got questions, we'll answer them. You got comments, we'll take them head on. So whatever we've got, we'll get to that. What else did we want to go over? Oh, yeah, bold predictions. I want to go over the bold predictions. We do our cover for every Thursday, and if you haven't seen this, it's one of the most fun things. In fact, it may be the most fun thing that I think we do at Dog Nation every week. At Thursdays at 3 o'clock, Jeff Santel, Connor Riley, Brandon Adams, and myself, we do the Brady Bunch box thing. All four of us are on the screen at one time. Brandon moderates it, and we ask these questions every week. We've had mock drafts of current Georgia players. We've had mock drafts of Kirby's best players. This week we did bold predictions. Everybody give 2 bold predictions. So I'm going to start out with BA, Brandon Adams' bold predictions, and tell you what I think of them. I think they were pretty good. One, Brandon said that Azeez Ojulari would finish with double-digit sacks. I actually had that written down as one of my own. I went away from it because I think Connor had a sack-related prediction. So I said, okay, I can switch gears off that. I think Ojulari gets double-digit sacks for a couple of reasons. One, I'll start out with this. One, the offense, okay? Last year's offense was more about proficiency, was more about taking time off the clock because there were some limitations in the pass game, right? We all know that Jake wasn't exactly in sync with the outside receivers because, as Kirby said, a merry-go-round of receivers last year. People went, oh, that's just an excuse. Listen, it's not an excuse. Georgia lost their top 5 pass catchers from a year ago, and then they had another 5 or 6 guys hurt at receiver. So there was very little continuity. And in a pro style of offense, your quarterback and receiver not only have to have the timing, but they got to make the same read. And that may seem easy, but it's not, because defenses change up and disguise, and you're asking those inexperienced receivers to step in there and make pro style reads. And that takes time to do. And Georgia never really got there consistently. Now, you saw it against Florida, magic, right? 12 of 18 on third downs. And you saw it when Lawrence Cager was on the field, Jake completing over 70% of his passes, because Jake knew where Lawrence would be, and Lawrence knew how to read a defense. You take Lawrence Cager away, Jake went sub 50%. So the Georgia offense was not geared towards a lot of scoring. This year, I believe it will be. Now, it remains to be seen how they do it. But with Jamie Newman, the read option, we mentioned Beck, Mathis, they've got a stable of backs behind those guys. There's a lot of young talent. This is going to be a very simple offense, but it's going to be a spread offense, and I believe there's going to be some tempo involved. So what does that mean? I think more points on the board. More points on the board means the other team's playing catch up more, means the defense can pin their ears back, and Kirby can be more aggressive. Now, he won't do that and risk broken assignments. Kirby doesn't like to give up the cheap touchdown, the most fascinating stat that flew under the radar last year, and Georgia never got credit for it, and they should have. The last 6 regular season games, this is amazing. The last 6 regular season games, Georgia didn't give up a play longer than 40 yards. And do you realize they didn't give up a rushing touchdown until the Auburn game with about 2 weeks left in the regular season? I mean, that was a heck of a stat for me. I don't even know if they gave up a running back touchdown in the regular season, because the Auburn quarterback was the one that snuck in, and just barely. So that Georgia defense, and they got 9 of those 11 guys back from the sugar. So the Georgia defense is going to be salty. Azeez is going to be a little bit better, because I thought he was fabulous last year. He'll probably go pro. And I do think he'll get double-digit sacks. BA's other prediction was that Georgia would have 3 700-yard receivers. He called Pickens, Robertson, and Blaylock. I'm going to disagree with that, only because I think the ball's going to get spread out a little bit more. That's kind of Kirby's tendency. Again, Kirby, he's the D coordinator, but he kind of assists with this, and I think that part of what makes offenses effective is when you are able to spread the ball out, when the ball goes where the defense isn't. So the defense somewhat dictates it. Now, George Pickens is going to get his. George Pickens will probably go over 1,000 yards, may even set a new single-season record. But as far as Dominic Blaylock, he just had knee surgery in December. Still not sure what version of him we're going to see this season. Typically, it takes that second season. Even if the guy's back physically, he's really not back mentally till at least the second year. That's typical. Now, Blaylock may beat that curve. He's a fast healer. I know Jeff Sentell talked some stories about Blaylock being on a dance floor somewhere or on a dance video. I don't know. But dancing and playing football are two different things, man. They're not trying to kill you on the dance floor unless you step on somebody's shoes, I guess. Demetrius Robertson, the other one. I like D-Rob a lot. I think he's going to be back. I know his hamstring bothered him early last year. I think he's going to be healthy, but I still don't think he's durable enough to go over 1,000 yards. And I don't think George is going to try to get this guy over 1,000. Look, he's not a big, thick guy. He's a speed guy. And he's just not that guy that's going to go up and get hit 40 times in one season. I mean, and you don't want to do that to anybody, right? So I'm going to go against BA on that one. I don't think there'll be 3 700-yard receivers, but I do think Pickens will become the third receiver to go over 1,000. Sentell, love Jeff Sentell. You guys read Sentell's Intel. He does a Wednesday night show where he talks recruiting. He's our recruiting ace. Jeff's prediction was that Terrence Edwards' receiving record would fall. I'm on with that. He also predicted that Aaron Murray's quarterback record, passing yards in one season, would fall. And I'm not going to go along with that. And the reason why is because I think there's going to be more platooning at quarterback. Not necessarily because I think Jamie Newman's going to struggle. I don't. I just think that Kirby's going to work Carson back into Dwan Mathis. I think Mathis is the kind of guy that you're going to wean into the offense slowly, but he's also so dynamic with that 10-800 speed that maybe you have a package for Dwan. Carson, you want to bring him along as well. Hey, remember 2017? Jacob Eason was the starter at the beginning of the year, and then it took Jake Fromm. Kirby is very cognizant of the fact that in the SEC and in football in general, you better have number 2 ready. And in Georgia's case, I don't think there is a true number 2. I think those two guys are going to battle it out, Mathis and Beck, over the next season. So I'm going to go against the Aaron Murray. Now, they may set a single-season team record for passing, but I don't think we're going to see one quarterback get it. Jeff's other prediction is that a freshman will start on the Georgia offensive line this season. We all know Broderick Jones is a 5-star. We know Tate Ratledge is another high-ranking lineman that could come in. I assume he's talking about true freshman. I think that is a very safe pick. I will agree with Jeff that we will see a freshman start, and I'll even say multiple games. So good prediction from Jeff there. Connor Riley had a pretty bold prediction here with Trayvon Walker leading the team in sacks. Listen, Trayvon Walker might ultimately be the best Georgia defensive lineman on the team. I'm not, Jordan Davis is a pretty big dude. Malik Herring is another talented guy. I don't know if you count outside linebackers that put their hand in the dirt as D-line. Do you count Azeez Ojulari? Do you count Jermaine Johnson? Do you count Nolan Smith? But if you don't, he may be right about that. It may be ultimately Trayvon Walker. He may be a Hall of Famer. I mean, the guy is so athletic to be carrying 285 pounds. And what he did last year, I mean, the kid broke his wrist and came back and played and came up with a game-ending sack against Auburn. So I do agree that Trayvon Walker is an absolute freak. But I'm going to go against Connor on this because Malik Herring shares the position. And because Trayvon's not going to get all those repetitions, I don't think he's going to get as many sacks, and I don't think his position as prone to sacks. I think he's got enough run responsibilities, whereas I think a guy like an Azeez or Jermaine Johnson, or who knows, maybe either Adam Anderson, a guy who comes in pass rush situations, would be in more positions to make plays just by the nature of the position. Connor also predicts Jamari Salyer starts every game at left tackle. I guess I could go with that. I like Jamari. I saw some video of him working out with Andrew. I know I brought up I'm concerned about his weight. Always concerned about the big guys, even when they're in training. But being away from the team, being away from the training table where you got the experts counting your calories, listen, that's hard on those guys. Jamari looked good the last time I saw him on video, though. I think he's getting the message, working out with Andrew Thomas, best thing that can happen to him. And I'm more confident now than I was earlier this week after seeing a video the other night. I can't even remember where I saw him. I saw it on Andrew's Instagram or Jamari's. I'm not sure, but I saw it and I said, okay, he looks better than he did like a month ago. I think I saw Channel 11 or 46 did a feature on Andrew, and Jamari was in the background. And these guys cut weight. It's amazing how hard these young players work and how quickly that they can drop weight effectively. And Jamari Salyer, though, he's one of the guys that absolutely has to have a big season I think, for Georgia to be a championship team. So that's my rundown. Like I said, it was a busy week. We've gone 30 minutes with me just talking. So let me take a look and see if you've got any questions here. I see Philip Beck. Hey, Philip. It's good to see you. Kenny Mack is a capable RB1. The thing I like about Kenny McIntosh, in addition to the fact that, I think he's a versatile guy that can catch the ball and run it. He obviously has breakaway speed. He had, the 64-yard run last year. I know it was against Arkansas State or some nobody. But he's at home training with an NFL player, big brother R.J. McIntosh, and brother Dion, who played at Notre Dame and Washington State. So he's grinding with his brothers every day. And they're all over Kenny. Kenny's the little brother. So you always beat up the little brother, right? They're leaning on Kenny. I know this to be true. So that's one reason that I like Kenny McIntosh to have a big season. I like Zamir White also to have a good season. Zamir is a workout warrior. Remember what I was saying about looking better 2 years later? Well, this is 2 years later for Zamir coming off the knee. I saw some promise from Zamir in the Sugar Bowl. I saw some wiggle that hadn't been there. Before it looked like he was in there. He was just kind of the bull in the china shop, running straight ahead. I wondered, does this guy not have vision? This doesn't look like the guy I saw on tape. But against Baylor, I saw some nice cuts from Zamir White. I saw some wiggle. I saw some vision. I said, aha, I think he's warming up to it. Now, the question with Zamir is, how does he catch the ball, right? Because we know in this Todd Monken offense that it's going to take some versatility. And Chris West brings this up right here in the comments. Chris says, I feel like Monken has a proven track record of offensive production where Coley simply did not. Understand we lost at receivers, but the scheme didn't do any favors to help the guys out either. Thoughts? Chris, I would agree with that, okay? But a couple of things here. One, and listen, it is what it is right now. And I think Georgia feels good about what it is right now. But if Jake was back, I kind of think James Coley would have been back. And let me explain why. James Coley, it wasn't like James Coley just came out of nowhere and had never, read the Georgia playbook. James Coley had worked alongside Jim Chaney. He understood. He spoke Kirby. He understood what the head coach wanted. He understood some of the things that Jake liked in an offense. The problem was the synchronization and those outside receivers. We never really got, well, maybe we did. Maybe we did get to see, because let's not forget what happened against Florida. The offense looked pretty doggone good. I mean, they were pretty doggone good against Florida. Now, could it have been that way against A&M? Could it have been that way against LSU if Cager had been healthy? I don't know. Corey, you're asking me if I need a beer. Corey Jones. You know what I'm drinking in my cup. You guys know what I'm drinking. It's green tea, and I do have the tropical green tea from the Jittery Joe's down the street, along with a Zen green tea bag. So to me, this is where I go. I get the green tea, and it keeps me going. It's healthy. It's got antioxidants. The beer, maybe if I go back to Michigan and I see my friends and there's not a work day tomorrow, okay, maybe I'll have one. But sitting on my back porch talking to y'all, knowing that I want to get up tomorrow and work out, and knowing that I'm going to have a story to write in the morning, yeah. So it's green tea for me. No Earl Grey, Kent. That's got a little too much caffeine. Believe it or not, I can get a little too charged up on caffeine. I remember when I covered Tennessee, my former sports editor, John Adams, I would drink these sweet teas, right? This is before I was trying to I work to try to stay healthy. I really do. And I did then too, but like on Saturday, I'll be like, well, it's game day, right? You're in the press box, eat the hot dog, eat the sugar cookie, drink too sweet. And I would drink these sweet tea and I would get so hyped up. And John would just say, Mike, do you know how loud your voice is? You need to calm down, man. So I became aware that there is the potential for me to have too much caffeine. So I don't do the Earl Grey or the black tea because I think it's got a little too much caffeine, and I don't want to get too jacked up because it's already 9:30. And I want to be asleep by 11 o'clock, 11:30 at the latest, right? Because I got that alarm in my head goes off at 7:30 on the weekend, whether it's a work day or not. So that's why I know Earl Grey. Very important information to know there. I see my daughter is in the chat room, and she already knows that I like Adidas. But you know what? This is the gear. I had a nice 3.5 mile walk at a park, and went with the red hat. I said, you know what? I'm not a I'm not a fan of any program, but I'm going to respect the Georgia fan. I got to wear a red hat. I'm not going to see a Georgia G on me. But, red hat's pretty neutral. Red, blue. I mean, it's like in every wardrobe, right? So it's not like, but you wear orange, and there's only one reason to wear orange, and that's because you're a Tennessee fan. Or you wear green, and there's only one reason to wear green, and that's because you're a Michigan State fan. So, but red and blue, it's like, it doesn't really mean anything. All right, what else we got here? Let's go back to the questions. Adrian Hill, thank you for the compliments about my passion. And dedication to Fromm. No. Okay, Adrian, here's the thing about Jake. You say you need a playmaker. I would agree that with this Todd Monken offense, you do. But Kirby built this team around the talent that he had. And let's go back and let's hit the refresh button. What did Georgia have? What does all the Georgia fans like to do? RBU. Hey, RBU, man. Where RBU? You got Gurley. You got Chubb. You got Michelle. Okay, Kirby Smart era. You got Chubb and Michelle. So what did they do in 2017? They gave the ball to Chubb and Michelle. They had the highest run-pass ratio of any non-option team in the country in 2017, and you would have fired Jim Chaney if they didn't. Because when you got Sony Michel and Nick Chubb and DeAndre Swift, by the way, you better use these guys because they're the best weapons that you got on the field. So you build your offense around your talent. And what did Georgia have? They had the Great Wall. They had 2 first-round picks at offensive tackle. They had a 4th-round pick, Solomon Kenley at guard. You had Big Ben Cleveland when he was healthy at 340, a mountain man that could press a house. I mean, of course you're going to play power football, and you had the best defense in the country. So no, you're not going to throw the ball all over the yard. Yes, you're going to be proficient. Yes, you're going to run a pro-style offense where you're going to feed off of the defensive weaknesses and play to your strength, which this year was DeAndre Swift. The only receiver that you could quote-unquote trust through the first half of the season, and you could make the case through the end of the season, was Lawrence Cager. George Pickens did not enroll early. George Pickens was not comfortable with the playbook the first half of the season. Nobody's told me that, but my eyes did because I watched the Notre Dame game, and he had 0 catches. George Pickens had 0 catches in Game 4 against Notre Dame, and that is because Jake Fromm did not trust him enough to throw him the football. Or the coaches didn't trust him enough to call the plays because George Pickens is a worldwide talent. George Pickens is going to set the world on fire this year. This offense will be geared towards George Pickens because he is now the best skilled player on the team. But last year he wasn't. What you had that you were very good with was a huge offensive line, a potential franchise running back, and a guy in Jake Fromm that, as they say, is as good as anybody from the neck up. High football IQ, fast processor, doesn't turn the ball over, didn't even have a pick till that darn South Carolina game, and 2 of those 3 picks we could attribute to the receivers. One goes right off Tyler Simmons' hands in overtime. Everybody remembers it. Sorry, Tyler, it happened. The other one, Landers turns the wrong way on a route. The third one, Jake's trying to throw it out of bounds. South Carolina D. Bree broke on, made a hell of a play. So that's Jake's 3 picks. I think he had what? He had another game with 2 maybe, right? So maybe there are 2 games out of 12 that Jake throws interceptions. That's pretty impressive. Bryce Dixon is ready to see Georgia use the tight end. Okay, here's the thing, okay? Let's go back again. Now, in a pro-style offense, you could say, what are they giving us? They're giving us the tight end. Remember some games, Bryce, when Isaac Nauta, he had so many clutch catches, seemed like Florida, seemed like Alabama, seemed like when the time to ring the bell, Isaac Nauta made those big plays. Well, those were setup plays. Those were called the answer plays. And I'll go back to last year's Florida game. Eli Wolf and Jake Fromm knew before the game started that when they put out a certain formation and a certain look and Florida lined up like A, B, or C, they knew that play to Eli was going to be there. Remember that 3rd and 7 that enabled Georgia to run out the clock after Florida had pulled within a touchdown? Okay, that was an answer play. They call that an answer play. Georgia knew it would be there pre-snap. That's what pro style gives you. That's when you use your tight end, when you know it's going to be there. Unless you've got Rob Gronkowski, or what was that guy from Notre Dame, Cole Kmet, unless you've got this and Georgia just might, because there's a very special freshman coming in, and I've predicted that he's going to be an impact player, and he comes from Desert Pines High School, Darnell, Washington, 6'7", 260. People are telling me, Mike, you've never seen a tight end guy you've never seen a tight end prospect like this. I said, okay, I want to see it. He better be good. He better be in shape. He better know his assignments, and he better be on time for everything, because he's not an early enrollee. I'll be honest with you. Now that I think of it, now that you say those things, that's probably not very likely for a guy that wasn't an early enrollee. So as talented as he is, Trey McKitty, also not an early enrollee. Now, it's not impossible. Eli Wolf came in and learned the offense, did an unbelievable job. I know Tennessee fans are proud of Eli. I know they always love Eason. That family was just incredible. Thought they did a wonderful job. In Charlie Warner, another talented guy, you saw him get drafted by the 49ers. But in Kirby's offense, or in that pro-style offense, sometimes the tight ends just weren't there. Sometimes they just weren't a part of what the defense is going to give you. That's what the pro-style does. Now, what we're going to see Monken go to, more of this RPO, this is going to be a lot more fluid. This is going to be almost like Jamie Newman determining the play as it goes, right? On the and he can actually keep it. That was kind of the problem with it. Now, some people would say, well, you can run the RPO even if the quarterback doesn't keep it. Well, you can, but not really, because the defense isn't going to respect that quarterback action. Now Jamie Newman will make them respect it. He's 6'4", he's 230. I mean, this guy's a tough guy. He's a projected first-round pick. We talked earlier this week to Jim Nagy. He's already on the Senior Bowl radar. This offense is going to be a little bit more fluid as the play develops, a little bit more read. Not so much maybe pre-snap. Some pre-snap. That's my thought. And more spread, okay? Maybe the linemen won't be quite as, I don't want to say they're not going to be as big and strong, but maybe not quite as heavy-legged, okay? And no offense to Trey Hill, but your center doesn't got to get out there on the perimeter anyway. A lot of people say, why doesn't Georgia run outside? Well, did you see the guards? Guards weren't exactly the most agile guys in the world. Matt Luke at Ole Miss, his teams can get on the perimeter a little bit. I think there's going to be some Matt Luke influence in this offense. But again, these guys have got to get on campus. They got to see what they got. You can't just base it off what you saw, because you got to see who comes back in good shape. It sounds crazy, but who's been taking care of themselves? I saw a Monty Rice video earlier today. Loved seeing Monty work out. I'm high on Monty. Some people feel like his ceiling isn't that high. I think Monty Rice is a guy, though, that can make, just pure toughness. He's just a guy that strikes me that he's a team leader. I see him working hard, and he's not one of the guys I'm worried about, right? Richard LeCount, not worried about him. Certain guy corners, I'm not worried about the Georgia defense, because there's so much competition. Those guys know they can lose their job if they're not shooting. The offensive line concerns me just by the nature of the position. Now, and Matt Luke is a great coach, but how connected is he to these guys? He arrived for the Sugar Bowl. It's not like he knows their mom and dad and their life story like he recruited them. So, that worries me a little bit, is what's the communication like? What's the level of accountability that these offensive linemen feel to Matt Luke? A lot of these guys haven't been through the wars. Do they really know how good they need to be? So that's one concern. You heard Kirby say they don't really know what they've got at quarterback. Obviously, the continuity between the quarterbacks and the receivers, that's another concern. There's a lot of things on offense that need to go right. Now, they don't need to be perfect, because this defense is out of this world, but the offense needs to go right to a certain extent. Going back to the questions, Amos Williams. Amos, you're really stuck on Jake, man. They didn't try to just run over everybody, okay? They didn't try to run over Florida. They look at those passing stats. They didn't just try to run over Baylor. Jake was 20 out of 30 for 260 yards. They didn't just run over people. There's more to it. It's balanced, and again, it has to do with talent. You say modernize and spread it out. That doesn't necessarily always work, okay? What LSU did had more to do with the talent. For example, Kirby Smart, Georgia had plenty of 3 and 4 receiver formations and ran the exact same route trees as LSU. What was the difference? The difference was Georgia receivers couldn't get open, okay? So it's not just about the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes. It's matching the scheme to the talent that you have, and that's why, again, I'll say it one more time, so important that these Georgia guys get back on campus so that Monken and Matt Luke and Kirby Smart and Del McGee, Cortez Hankton can make a read, Todd Hartley, and say, okay, who's our guys? Who are the best guys out there? Because once they know, then they can go, okay, let's design, plays for this. James Cook, all right? James Cook, we haven't brought his name up, amazingly. How effective will James Cook be? I thought James Cook, and I will say this about James Coley, and I'll say it about Jake Fromm. I don't think Georgia did enough to get James Cook the ball last year. Now, what I don't know, the part of the equation that I don't know and that you don't know, is what was James Cook doing at practice? Was James Cook earning those opportunities? Was he perfect on every snap? Or was he not perfect on it? Maybe there's a reason they didn't go to. Maybe there's a reason Jake didn't trust going to James Cook, right? Because maybe James Cook didn't always run the right way out of the backfield. I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. I'm just saying the coaches know much, much more about this personnel than we do. And Jake certainly did, right? One of the things that Jim Nagy said earlier this week about Jake that I found interesting was he said he thought that Jake was frustrated and that Lawrence Cager was a guy that he could trust. And he said that Jake reminded him, I forget, of somebody else, of Tom Brady. He said he reminds me a little bit of Tom Brady, that if a receiver or a back, if they don't know the play, he's done with you. He ain't going to you. So that's what kind of made me go, I wonder if that's why so many of those times I saw Cook out in the flats and Jake didn't even look his way. If Jake's just like, I don't know, did he just feel like, I don't know. Jake's not going to come out and say, I don't feel like I could trust this guy. But, actions speak louder than words, and James didn't get the ball a lot. One note on James Cook. I'm gonna recommend this to all of you. I should have known this. This was a huge failing on my part as a beat writer. As soon as I got the Georgia Beat 2 years ago, it should have been mandatory for me to watch QB1 and watch Jake Fromm in that season of QB1. I don't know how many of you watched QB1. It was wildly entertaining. I loved it. I loved seeing the different high school environments. I loved seeing the different programs, the different coaching styles. And Jake was great. I saw more personality from Jake Fromm in one episode than I did in 2 years. And again, coming here to Georgia, I saw Greg. Greg, you're asking me about what about the Vols? Greg Guest wants to know. I covered Tennessee a long time, man. I raised my family in Knoxville. I was there from 98 to 2012, covered the championship team. It was great. Covered Bruce Pearl's entire tenure. Fantastic beat. Then I went and did Michigan State, went back and did 2 more years at Tennessee. Under the same umbrella, a different company called SEC Country. I don't know if y'all remember that. And it was fun. It was great. We did a lot of really creative things. Went to a lot of recruits' homes. I still have that sit-down video with a lot of those players that just now got picked into the NFL or going there as free agents. I was at Daniel Batuli at his high school, and Ryan Johnson, a guy that just transferred to Georgia Tech. That was one of my first in-home visits. Tyler Bird, a guy that played receiver, and Carlin Filsamy. You go into the homes of all these guys and meet these players and their families, and of course you want to see them do well. And so I know a lot of people still in Knoxville, and I saw somebody here, hey, Mike got fired and he came to Georgia. No, we shut down SEC Country. We had writers all over the Southeast. We had Land to 10, and the company said, hey, we're not going to go this direction. We're not going to have the internet sites like this anymore. And so it was abolished, and that was it. And the day that happened, I went into the Atlanta Journal office, and I said, hey, man, I want the Georgia Beat. I want to cover Georgia football. It was a hard and fast and strong decision, but it was a program that I'd always respected. You guys know I did Alabama and Auburn in the 90s. I'd done Tennessee. I said, what's next, right? Life's an adventure. We only get to do this one time. There's no sequel. So what do I want to do now? I want to do Georgia. I want to go to Athens. I've been here a few times. I'd always had a good experience. I knew Claude Felton, good friends with Chip Towers. And I went for the job, man. And there were dozens of people. You guys know what my industry's like. I'm not breaking any news here. There's a lot of out-of-work sports writers. It's a tough industry, right? Newspapers are shrinking down. But let me tell you, this Cox Enterprises group that I work for has been absolute solid gold to their employees throughout this entire pandemic. There's nowhere I would rather be than this company and covering this beat right now. And I'm so fortunate. And you guys ask me, say, you thank me for doing the show. Hey, listen, I thank you for watching and being this sort of fan base that's this involved. I enjoy this stuff. I enjoy talking about football. I enjoy talking about Georgia and looking into the future of the season. In this particular off season, I'm trying to take the responsibility to keep you informed on what Greg Sankey's saying and what's happened at UGA and where we're at in our progression to get back to college football. That's my objective. I want to take care of my readers. Jeff does the same thing with recruits. BA does the same thing every day with Dog Nation Daily. And Connor, he's our MacGyver. He can do it all, right? So we're all committed. The Dog Nation team is all committed to the Georgia fan base because you're so darn committed to us, and we appreciate that. And so, for me sitting on my back porch, drinking a green tea and talking football with y'all, I'm good with it. And if somebody wants to buzz me and say something mean, hey, listen, you can do that, man. I've been in this business 33 years. I got thick skin, and I've been through a lot of circumstance. Every job move I've made has been a move up. I've been fortunate, starting out in Idaho. Idaho State was my first beat, guys. I got to tell you, I graduated Michigan State with a journalism degree. I covered the Detroit Lions in college. I covered pro boxing at Kronk, but I also covered high schools. I covered junior college basketball. I covered local golf. I did all that stuff in college for 4 years. Go out to Idaho. Started to subscribe to the newspaper in Mobile, Alabama. I wanted to work in Mobile, Alabama. I'm a Mobile native. I grew up watching SEC football because I knew I was born in Mobile, Alabama. So that was what was on, was Keith Jackson SEC football. So I started networking with Mobile, Alabama from Idaho. I'd get their paper delivered out there a week later, and I would call their sports department every Sunday night, and they had a guy there named Kim Sugar. Kim was the sports editor. He played baseball at Auburn. Nicest guy in the world. Could have hung up on me, could have told me to stop calling, but every Sunday night, this guy would give me 15 minutes, and I'd ask him about Alabama, and I'd ask him about Auburn, and at the end of the conversation, I'd always say, "Are there any jobs, Kim?" "Well, no, Mike, we don't have any jobs yet." And I'd hang up the phone, and another week in Idaho. So I'm out in Idaho covering Dodge National Finals Rodeo at Pocatello, Idaho State Bengals, right? Watching them play Weber State and things like this. Well, one week, Kim Shugart says, "Hey, Mike, we don't have a job, but there's a job in Anniston." I said, "Well, where's Anniston?" I had no, if y'all know where Anniston is, I had no idea where Anniston, Alabama was, but it was to cover Auburn. And he said, I think you might like this job. They got a lot of really talented people there, and they really did. Jeff Calkins, he's the lead columnist at the Memphis Commercial Appeal. Jeff was there at the time. There was a guy named Ken Patterson who'd worked at the Birmingham News. A guy named Philip Tudor that's still there, but really rolls up their editorial chart. It's just a list of sports writers, that just went on and on, had gone through Anniston. It was about the same size, small paper. So I said, sure, yeah, I'll apply. And I sent my clips from Idaho. And I found the letter the other day where the editor, who was a former Detroit News sports columnist and sports editor, said, "Well, we don't normally hire people over the phone, but we like your work, so you're hired in Anniston." So I drove back across the country and I covered Auburn in 93, 94. And I kept talking to Mobile, got hired down there. So then I go from Anniston after covering Auburn down to Mobile and did this magazine called SEC Sports Weekly. I don't know how many of y'all remember that. It was 94. We had it printed out of Atlanta, 48-page color tab. Worked, again, with the best journalists in the Southeast. We had different beat writers from all the schools in this one magazine. Chip was one of them. That's how I knew Chip. And then I got put on the Alabama beat. And that was pretty awesome. I drove up to Tuscaloosa and back, 4 or 5 times a month, it seemed like, I guess. Put a lot of miles on the car. Covered Alabama. And then came the Tennessee job. The Tennessee sports editor said, "Hey, we like your work. How would you like to do Tennessee? You won't have to drive back and forth. You get to live in Knoxville." So okay. So then I did Tennessee, and that was great. And that was 14 years. And did a lot of cool stuff there. Went and covered the London Olympics. Did a lot of NASCAR, in addition to Tennessee football, basketball, softball. Ran across Pat Summitt. Good stuff. And then I went up to Michigan, the digital era, right? We started getting into digital journalism, like what you're seeing here on Dog Nation. And I said, you know what? It's time for a change. It's time to go digital. And I had an old buddy up there that said, "You need to come up here." I'd been looking at going to California for a job. He said, "Look, this is going to be better. You get the same amount of money. You're going back to your hometown." And went back to Michigan, did 4 years at Michigan State. It was great. They were successful. And then the SEC country job happened. So that's my career path. You know, I don't mind sharing it because it's something I'm proud of. But every job, there was a step and there was a reason. And I've been fortunate, and I've worked hard along the way and put a lot into it. And I'm not going to stop putting a lot into it, because I think that that's important. I think whatever you all do, I think you all would agree that the people that put the most into it and that are committed, genuine, it makes you vulnerable. Sure, it makes you vulnerable when you put your best into it and somebody doesn't like your work. That hurts a little bit more because you know you're doing your best. But you know what? That's part of life, man. You know, you better put it out there. You know, what is it? You can't steal second with your foot on first. So there's my little motivational spiel, and now you know a little bit more about my background. You know, how I got places, why I got places. You know, it's been great. You know, professionally, no regrets, none whatsoever. Where I want to be right now, doing what I want to do, and I feel like Georgia is like, I feel like I'm on the verge, like, of covering a championship program. You know, I see how close Kirby is. I see what's happening with the facilities. I see the fan base. I see the groundswell of support. It just, everything seems to be falling in place for Georgia, and I think it could be this year because of this defense. What's been missing from Georgia, in my opinion, based on other championship or near championship programs I've covered, right? So 93 Auburn, my first year there, they go 11-0. 98 Tennessee, they go 13-0, win a national title my first year. Watched Michigan State go to the first Rose Bowl in I don't know how many years, finishing the 2 Big Ten titles. You know, they beat Ohio State and Urban Meyer, totally outcoached them. So I've been around some great programs. But you gotta have the internal leadership. You know, when I look back at Auburn, it was the Dillard Five. You know, Del McGee, the Georgia running backs coach, was a part of that Auburn football team. You know, I didn't even realize that till like halfway through the first year. I'm like, Del McGee, wait a minute, you were on that Auburn team I covered in 1993. 98, Tennessee had Al Wilson. To me, the ultimate Mike linebacker, tough guy. He was the guy that would hold teammates accountable. Michigan State had a guy named Max Bulla in the middle, very famous Bulla family, generations of family that had gone through there, last name Bulla. Max was that guy. I look at Georgia, though, and the 2017 team, which I truly believe was the best team in the country. Yes, they lost. Don't need to, we all know what happened in overtime, but that was the best team. I saw them when they beat Tennessee that year. I said, this is the best team I'd seen in a long time, with Michelle and Chubb. And I mean, I was like, Georgia, good luck. Nobody's stopping these cats, and probably shouldn't have, but they did. Anyway, Roquan Smith in the middle. They had that leadership, and that was key. They had Sony and Nick, and they had Roquan Smith, and they had senior leadership. And I feel like when those guys moved on, there was a vacuum, and that does happen. When you've had great leadership, other guys haven't had to lead. And so they don't really know how. So what makes a great leader? Well, when I think about great leaders, I think about people that have been through the battles, that have been through the wars, that can see it through my eyes, right? You know, my boss understands me because, you know, he's been in a similar situation, or he can relate to me because he's ultra competitive, right? In this particular case, I look at a guy like Amani Rice. Monty's had a tough road, man. Monty's had injuries. Monty's had comparisons to Roquan Smith. I don't even know if Monty's even made All-SEC. All Monty's heard is that he's not good enough. And yet I think he is. And I think because he's battle-tested, his teammates, they all listen and respect him. And I think he sets a good example. Same with Richard LeCount. Richard LeCount didn't come back to be the runner-up in the SEC. Richard LeCount came back to win a national championship. You've got to have leaders. Monty Rice, Richard LeCount. The question that remains unanswered for Georgia is, who's that leader on the offensive side of the ball? Who's the leader who's it going to be? Can Jamie Newman assert himself? It hurts Jamie Newman that there was no spring football, because that's when guys bond. That's when you kind of find out who the dudes are, because there's going to be practice. There's going to be practice fights. Coaches never tell you that. They get the media out of there way before they even have practices. I'll tell you, man, one of the cool things about open practices back in the day, it's probably politically incorrect to say that practice fights were cool, but they kind of were, because first of all, nobody got hurt, all right? Let me just be clear on that. It wasn't like somebody was getting the pulp beat out of them. They all had their helmets and shoulder. Nobody's getting hurt. They're grabbing each other. They're yelling. You can't even understand what they're saying because their mouthpieces are in. But you would see, like, who the dudes were. Like, you knew who the guys were. When this guy entered the fray, it was over, right? Or you saw the guys that would bunch up. And then you would wait after practice and you would talk to those. They would walk out together. The guys that, like, 90 minutes ago were, like, at each other's throats on the football field are walking out and laughing and, where are we going tonight, man? You know, and everything's cool and you're just going, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work. Yeah, that's kind of a guy thing. Guys get that. Girls are like, how does this work? Like, you guys fight and then you're friends? It's like, yeah, pretty much. That's kind of how it works. That's how it works in football. And you would see, and the coaches, sometimes they just kind of stand back and they wouldn't blow their whistle right away. They wanted the guys to mix up a little bit. We want to have a good practice today. Don't see that anymore, but it's still happening. Look at Jody Ramsey wants to talk about Tennessee recruiting. The Tennessee fans are so excited. They have the number 3 recruiting class in the country. Okay, here's the thing. This is great. It's great. It's great for Tennessee. There's no doubt about it. They got a couple 5 stars, 15 commitments. But the average rating's 89. Georgia's got 7 commitments. The average rating's 94. I got to tell you that it's a quality over quantity thing. I will say this. It's a long time until we get to signing day. The last time Tennessee got off to this start, and I was there for it, and I wrote the story today about how the Georgia highlight video of beating Tennessee just totally set off Vol Twitter today. Because, here's Tennessee. They're all excited. They're number 3 in recruiting. They've won their last 6 games. And right after they get this 5-star, Georgia drops this video. And it looked, and Tennessee's like, don't tread on me. I'm like, look, it was the time for Georgia to drop the video because they've been doing week by week. So it was scheduled, okay? And Georgia doesn't really, especially not the official account. They really don't troll. Kirby's not a troll. Kind of Mullen may troll a little bit. Georgia fans will tell you Mullen trolled him with that stupid attendance number that was however many days since Georgia won a title in 1980 or whatever it was. Tennessee Georgia doesn't really do that. But to your point, Jordy, and for any of the Tennessee fans that are watching, the last time Tennessee had this much momentum was 2016 when Tennessee started the season 5-0. They won the Battle of Bristol with 160,000 people. I was there. We had binoculars in the press box. It was absolutely horrible to watch if you were there. They beat Florida, and then they beat Georgia. And they were 5-0, and they were ranked in the top 10 for the first time in 10 years. And that was a lot of momentum. And then they had the number 1 recruiting class in the SEC going into the 2017 season. They lost on the last second pass to Florida. They lost the Georgia game, and kaboom, it all came apart. And Butch Jones was fired, and that class wasn't anywhere near it was in September. So if you are Tennessee, be excited about your class, but recognize you have to back it up on the football field next season. If you can back it up on the football field and you can finish in the top 10, then I think Tennessee will have taken a very large step. Philip Fulmer told us in the spring the Vols are back. Georgia fans are saying, all right, let's see it. November 14th, Sanford Stadium will be under the lights. The Masters is that weekend. It's going to be a glorious weekend for sports. And then Georgia and Tennessee are going to play on November 14th. And Georgia will probably clinch the SEC East in that game. The question is, where does Tennessee finish? Are they a 6-win team? Are they an 8-win team? Where does their recruiting class finish? So, off-season's great. It's awesome that fans are fired up. It's awesome that the Georgia-Tennessee rivalry is alive and well. When I covered Tennessee from that side of it, Tennessee just kind of owned it in the 90s. And then 2001, was it 2001? Is that the David and David year? I believe 2001 was the David Green freshman season. David Green said he wasn't worried about the noise, and then he came into Neyland Stadium and he silenced them. Casey Clausen was a fabulous quarterback. He beat Florida twice at the Swamp. Not many SEC quarterbacks have done that. He beat Alabama, but he couldn't get by Georgia. David Pollock was a nightmare. I've talked to Casey about it. He's like, oh yeah, that guy's a monster. That guy was a monster. I still see that guy in my dreams. Georgia, that was a time when Spurrier left, when Tennessee knocked out Florida in 2001. Everybody thought, okay, now it's Tennessee's time. Steve Spurrier's gone. And Mark Rick and Georgia said, no, not so fast. Not so fast. And Georgia was the hurdle that Tennessee couldn't get over. And now here we are, 19 years later, Georgia's 3-time defending SEC East champ. Florida in pursuit. Tennessee in pursuit. Kentucky believes that they're legit. I don't know. Missouri, are they done? finally. I think Missouri's done, and they might be out for a little while. Don't know much about this new coach, but I think Missouri's kind of cooked. Thought they'd be better than they were last year. Who am I missing from the East? My Vanderbilt, they're done. You know, Derek Mason did a good job. Thanks for playing. You know, he's done. So you pretty much we're back to a 3. I think we're back to South Carolina. You know, oh boy, yeah, I know they beat Georgia last year, whatever. But I just don't see it. They lost their all-time leading receiver. You know, they lost Javon Kinlaw. He was an absolute wrecking machine at nose tackle. I don't know if they're going to have another guy like that. So South Carolina, no. It's Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. And we're kind of right back to where we started from. So pretty interesting. What other questions do we got here? Adrian Hill, thank you for the kind words. Very nice. If you got anything else for me, I'll go there. It's 10 o'clock. Otherwise, I'm on the verge of getting out. If we don't get any more questions, it's been real. It's been nice, fun. Very busy week. I hope you were able to catch the show earlier. We kind of recapped where they're at with the name, image, likeness. I think we kind of did. Maybe we didn't. Name, image, likeness. Let me go over that. So the Board of Governors approved some rules changes that allows for the student athletes to get paid moving forward. That means that they can have their own endorsement deals. Now, there's some questions still. You know, what if Adidas wants to sponsor a kid at a Nike school, right? We also know that when these kids do these endorsements, it's not like they can have like the Georgia helmet on or the SEC logo behind them. So they can't tie into the school or the conference is another thing. They can do things with their Twitter account. I think that's pretty interesting. How's that going to work out, right? Because all we hear from the coaches, and successfully, is, hey, don't go on Twitter. Be a team guy. Don't go on Twitter. But now all of a sudden, you know, a kid wants to get endorsements, so and they're going to have agents. So what's the agent going to do? How are they going to promote these guys? There's going to be some real questions. Also, coaches like Kirby and Nick Saban that don't let freshmen talk. Are they going to have to change that now? Because you know a place like Tennessee or Florida might say, hey, man, you come to our school, we'll let you do interviews. Because ain't nobody going to hire you to do any endorsements if you don't talk. They don't know who you are. There's no brand recognition. So you'll start seeing freshmen talk, I believe. You're going to have to let them talk. Otherwise, that's going to be used against you in recruiting. So you'll see more access to players in that sense. Or it's all got to be, you know, kind of balanced out. Nobody's want to give an inch. One of my predictions, you know, I did this whole predictions thing. And I didn't tell you what my 2 predictions were. One of my predictions was that Kirby was going to give in and let him wear the black jerseys this year. And the reason I said that is because of recruiting. Because you're seeing other schools go to alternate jerseys. And I think that the seniors, I think Richard LeCount is a guy that Kirby loves secretly. You guys know that Kirby gives Richard LeCount the business. I mean, he's the most ultra-critical, hypersensitive, because Kirby loves Richard LeCount, and he wants Richard to be the best. And Richard loves it that Kirby coaches him hard. But seeing it from the outside, you're like, man, this coach, he is all over. You got to understand, this is just how it is with these guys. But I think in the end, Kirby loves Richard enough that if Richard said, coach, we want to wear the, I think maybe Kirby will let him do it. I think maybe he will. We'll see. So that's my prediction. One of my predictions. Got some people talking NASCAR. NASCAR in the Georgia Dog Nation page. Wouldn't that be fun to see NASCAR get back at it instead of the video racing? The video racing was entertaining. It got us by in a pinch. Like we've all done some things to get by in a pinch, right? Like, I don't like to go out to the store, so, you know, I've reused tea bags if I've run out. Or in the case of the Jittery Joe's tea, I like it so much, I can't just drive there. They don't sell it in bulk, so I'll use it again. It's not as strong, I know that. But you do little things to get by when you're in the corn. Did you cut your own hair? I did. Someone told me last week they thought I cut my own hair. I hadn't, but now I have. Now I have cut my own hair a little bit. Look at James Crump. Nobody will know until game day. Boy, you're right, James. They would absolutely have to spring it on for that to be successful. Ease Brown, it's good to see you. Man, you know, just like getting familiar. Like, I always see Jacob O'Neal and Corey Jones. I always see my friends come in here when we start talking Georgia football, and that just makes it so much fun. Jermaine King is giving Tennessee. Look at this. Some Tennessee, Georgia love in here. We got some Tennessee, Georgia love going on in the dog, Georgia saying congratulations. They're so happy for Tennessee to get some of these recruits. And, it's great. It's the off season. Everybody can lose. There's a lot of love between. Now, Florida and Georgia, I don't think we're going to get those nice comments to one another. I just don't. It's a little bit different when it comes to Florida. It's one thing Georgia and Tennessee can agree on. They both absolutely hate Florida. Darn it, I just spilled my tea. It's kind of interesting. As many times, does Georgia beat Florida 3 times in a row? They could beat Florida. Look, Jermaine, you laughing at me because I spilled my tea, man. Come on. As many times as Georgia has beaten Florida in a row, 3, they're going to need to win about 30 more times in a row, I think, before Georgia fans don't enjoy that game. But one thing I will say, and everybody knows, maybe you know where I'm going with this, some Georgia fans don't agree. They say, Mike, I don't like this part of you. Don't say it, but I'm going to say it. One thing that's happened with this pandemic, when we look at our community here and we look at how Georgia has dealt with it, the money can't keep going to Jacksonville, folks. 2023, that's going to be the last year that Georgia-Florida plays in Jacksonville. That money needs to stay in Athens. 1, 2, Sanford Stadium, much better game day environment than Jacksonville. And you say, well, it's a tradition. Listen, some traditions shouldn't be there, okay? Jermaine King knows it. Look, do you see Georgia playing South Carolina in Myrtle Beach? Do you see Alabama playing LSU in New Orleans? It's time to keep the money in Athens. How nice would it be this year for that Georgia-Florida game to be in Athens? How important would that be to the Athens economy? How important would that be for the kids to not have to get on an airplane with everything that's going on right now? Just telling you, 2023, that's going to be the last year. Kirby gave him a concession. I think 2023 is it. So, Jermaine, I'm going to spare you the lecture that I always go. I'm passionate about this because I think it's best for Georgia. You know who else is? I talked to Pat Dye. I called Pat Dye. You all know Pat Dye. He's a former Georgia guy. Yes, he coached at Auburn, but he's a former Georgia guy. Pat Dye says it's stupid to play down there. Pat Dye, who is in the Hall of Fame, the Georgia, Florida, Jacksonville Hall of Fame, and Pat Dye says it's a bad idea. There you go. We're talking Steve Spurrier. I see Spurrier's name come up here now. Anytime we talk about Steve Spurrier, I get excited because Steve Spurrier was a lot like Nick Saban in that a lot of people wanted to see this guy beat. But the reason they wanted to see him beat was because he was the best. It was because Spurrier not just beat you, he knew how to rub it in. And Saban doesn't just beat you, he grinds you, and he does all these things to give Alabama, the waterfalls in the locker room and the Apple Watches to the players and, 100 different assistant coaches and all the guys in the press box. They keep having to make rules against Nick Saban's innovation. You got to tip your cap to Nick Saban. But remember, Nick was 49 years old before he won his first bowl game, okay? And again, you heard me earlier give my spiel about being in Georgia covering the Bulldogs. Kirby Smart's 44 years old. He's 44 years old. When Nick Saban was 44, I think he went 6-4-1 and played the Shreveport Independence Bowl and lost to LSU. Hadn't won his first bowl game until he's 49. If Kirby wants it, Kirby could be here for a long time. Kirby could be here for a long time. Look at Andy Sloan now. Jody came in here innocently enough to ask a question, and now the Georgia fans, listen, I'll just tell you, Jody can handle it. Jake Fromm singing Rocky Top. So when that happened, I didn't know what to make of it. I actually wrote a story that I felt like, and Eric, you're exactly right on Jacksonville. I actually felt like Jake was singing Rocky Top is kind of like a swag move, right? But he wasn't. After I watched QB1, I realized that that's just, like, Jake sings all the time. He sings horribly, by the way. But you watch QB1, and again, you folks got to watch the QB1 show. Not just because of Jake, but the future Ohio State and Miami guy. Oh, what was his name? The number one quarterback. He was the number one quarterback in the country. He played at Bishop Gorman. And then when Justin Fields transferred to Ohio State, he left. Tate Martell. Martell is a fascinating figure. But it's real life. I mean, these guys, if you would say, Griff, you're really going to enjoy watching this series that follows high school quarterbacks around, I would say, listen, That is the last thing in the world that I want to do is watch a high school quarterback, okay? But I watched the show and I'm like, this is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating. When Martell takes the state of Nevada flag and puts it over Texas, I laughed out loud, right? I was like, that is such an awesome move, right? I mean, that is like such a, just upset. I'm like, I would totally do that. Like now I would do that. But but I I wanted Martell to lose. But now I'm glad he didn't. Like it was the whole Steve Spurrier thing all over again. Jake Fromm, you just watch the Fromm family, and now I get it. I totally understand it. I see how it all works with Jake Fromm. And this is who Jake is. And he's going to go up to Buffalo. I saw Buffalo was like 8th among the NFL favorites. You watch this happen. Watch this happen. The Bills go to the playoff. Josh Allen gets hurt, and Jake Fromm say, you just know that Jake Fromm is going to have this happy ending, right? We know he's going to have this happy ending because he's Jake Fromm. And if you watch QB1, Jake has some moments in there. He's coaching up the Powder Puff. There's just, I got a whole new respect for Jake Fromm. I'm just really upset at myself that I didn't watch it before I covered the last two, because I would have asked Jake about some of these games and so I absolutely would have. But the QB1 series, totally recommend it, especially season 1. Such a great time. Antoine, man, you still on? We've been talking about so much, man. We had a Tennessee fan crash the party, so I had to talk about Tennessee. We had somebody asking about me getting a job here, so I kind of had to give my life story. I've drank green tea tonight, got me rolling. Season 2 with Justin Fields on QB1. Check that out too. Andy Sloan, you saw it. I don't know. I'm trying to find a new one. I'm into digging deep into the Netflix movies. I watched this movie called Cop Car the other night that was a quote unquote hidden gem, and I don't know what to tell you other than Kevin Bacon's in it, and I don't know how much of a hidden gem it is, but I'm still not sure if it was supposed to be funny or a dark comedy or what. I don't know if I'm a better person for watching it, but I did. And then last night I watched Soul Plane, which was, I don't even know what to say about Soul Plane. I don't know if you've seen Soul Plane. I would say it certainly does not pass the politically correct standards of today's era. But what do I say? It was Soul Plane. Snoop Dogg was the captain. I'll leave the rest up to your imagination if you didn't watch it. Don't know what's on tonight, but I'm going to find something fun. Sitting outside tonight, right? So last Friday I was in my living room. We were watching the draft together. We were waiting and waiting for Jake Fromm to get picked, and he never did. He didn't go till the 5th round. And then I was inside. I got the Dog Nation backdrop but I thought, what, today outside I walked 3.5. I felt good. I had allergies earlier this week. And listen, I didn't think I had allergies in. I thought I was over allergies, done with allergies. I used to have to get shots when I was a kid. I'd have to go to the place in Okemos, Michigan, and get 4 shots in the right arm and 4 shots on the left arm. And Mom would take me for ice cream, and that was the only reason that I looked forward to allergy shots every Tuesday and Thursday, and that was what life was through 6th grade. And then allergies went away. I didn't even think about allergies until earlier this week. And I could literally smell the pollen, which it never honeysuckle in the air, pollen. I'm good with all this. Man, I had allergies. My sinuses, you guys remember I was coughing? People were going, oh, COVID. I was like, people, don't. I'm not coughing anymore. I feel so good. We had rain. Allergies are gone. Hooray. So I'm outside tonight. I'm enjoying being outside. Chip, you're watching Ozark. I loved Ozark. Loved it. Went through it fast. Someone told me that Soul Plane was a guilty pleasure. Someone asked, do me and BA get along? Listen, we sit next to each other every game in the press box. And the Dog Nation team, and you guys may pick this up by watching our cover 4. It sounds corny, all right, but we really are like brothers. I mean, we all like each other. I post the stuff on my own page. That's the squad now. B&A can be allies one day against Jeff and Connor on we may disagree with something, right? Mike and BA think this, Connor and Jeff think that. Well, tomorrow it's Mike and Jeff that are saying this, and Connor, and it's just, we roll like that. And we have arguments, sure, we have disagreement, but it's not man, I don't like that. It's just it is what it. You work with people. What are people like with your job, right? When you work this closely together, we're all, I think, pretty creative people. We're all very opinionated people. But the thing that we know how to do that makes cover for work is we can agree to disagree, and that's the fun of it. I mean, if we all sat there and all said the same thing, yep, I think that's the guy. Yep, what do you think, Mike? Oh, I agree with BA. Oh, I agree with Connor. I agree. We're going to disagree. We're going to argue. So when you see that, don't take that as anything more than just, us doing the show. And I can tell BA I disagree with him. He can tell me he disagrees with me. And that's cool because that's just our opinion. That's the way you do it. I mean, if we all agreed, if we all had the same, man, how boring would that be? If everybody had the same favorite flavor of ice cream? What is my watch doing? If it'd be like if everybody had the same favorite flavor of ice cream, So do I BA and I get along fine. I get along fine with Connor, I get along with BA, get along fine with Jeff. Michael Carvel's my producer. Coworkers. As hard as everybody works, there's just a respect, So we like each other. We have fun. I don't think Cover 4 would work if it didn't. I really don't. And I don't think Dog Nation would work if it didn't. So we can disagree. We can agree to disagree. I might get frustrated with an argument BA makes or vice versa, but don't take that as anything more than professional guys doing a show, and comfortable enough to disagree, and I hope you all enjoyed that. And Jermaine, thanks for the compliment. We do have different takes, like Jacksonville, like the receivers, like the quarterbacks. They've got me pegged now. And I was thinking about this today. So we sign off Thursday, and Jeff is like, I think Jeff is like, I don't know, is there anybody who doesn't like Jeff Santel? I think he's just like the coolest, nicest guy. He's the thoughtful guy. He's the good listener, right? He's very creative. But he can be a bit of a smart aleck. And he had a prediction, he did these predictions before the show. And one of them was that Mike will mention Kenny McIntosh during the show. So these guys think I've got mad love for Kenny McIntosh. Look, I think Kenny McIntosh is a great running back. So what? So that's the guy that I think is going to be great. Yeah, I think that. But is that okay? And I got thinking later, they're calling me out because I think Kenny McIntosh is a good running back. I remember they used to call me out about Sean Alexander when he redshirted at Alabama. We saw how that one ended. Now, I'm not saying Kenny's going to score 100 touchdowns and be an NFL MVP like Sean Alexander was. But I am saying I got confidence in him. But I also thought a lot of James Cook last year. I thought James Cook would have 1,000 total yards last year. He didn't. I was wrong about that one. I still think Cook is dynamic. And he's working out with big brother Delvin Cook. Big advantage. This is going to be a big year for James Cook. Zamir White, I was the guy that had questions. Jeff predicted 1,000 yards. I said I don't think so. I had questions about the knee, right? So we all kind of have our questions, and we all kind of have guys we believe in. I believe in Dwan Mathis. I see what the family's gone through. We all have opinions. So I don't know, did I take that conversation where I needed to go? Maybe not. It's Friday Night Mike. We're loose, we're talking, we're hanging out. We've covered a lot of ground. Everybody's having fun. I don't know how you're approaching your social distancing. I know the different states are opening up to different degrees. So my approach is measured. My approach is do what you're comfortable with. My approach is try to be tolerant of others' opinions that may differ from yours. It's a stressful time for a lot of people. I don't think there is one right answer. And if there is, we don't even know what it is, because we're still trying to put our arms around all this information. I thought it was interesting. Sankey said he was talking to like a biostatistician from South Carolina, and she said there were two huge parts of information that we needed. And one was how many people actually have it. We don't know. Antibiotic testing is starting, but we're not anywhere close to knowing. And, two, exactly what are we dealing with, right? So I would just say be measured. I'd say use common sense. I'd say take care of your family. I would say value every day. And what I'm doing is I'm taking a measured approach. I don't know when, for example, when am I going to do something that somebody might think is reckless, right? So right now it's drive-throughs. Like, okay, I'm going through a drive-through. I don't think that's reckless to go through a drive-through and get some green tea. But what about when the neighborhood pool opens? Am I going to go to the neighborhood pool? I probably will. especially if it's June. What I'm telling myself is I'm going to give myself May. That's what I'm telling myself. But in June, in Athens, Georgia, I'll probably have to be in the pool. 'Cause I like to swim laps, and I need to learn more about COVID and water and chlorine and stuff like that, but I really want to go to the pool. So that's probably going to be my reckless move this summer, is to go to the pool. That's probably what I'm going to do, just so you know. I'll probably try to go to the beach. That's probably going to be another reckless move. I've been thinking about flying. How am I going to do this? My mom and dad live in Arizona. I haven't seen them in a while. What's it going to take for me to fly? I need to do some research. So I'm on the verge. I'm not planning it like everybody else, but we're all in a different place and we all have different priorities. And so my advice is, do you, and use common sense and be measured in your approach. I don't think anybody is going to go hog wild. Terry says it's going to be a while in the subdivision. My neighbors are probably like listening, like, this loud guy is on his back porch talking football again when our kids are in bed. I'm surprised the dogs aren't howling. They haven't heard me say bulldog. Usually when I say bulldog, some of these dogs around here start howling and barking. I'm up kind of late. I'm probably keeping the neighbors up. It's 10:30. So I should probably end the show tonight. I'm going to come back Sunday night. I'm going to do another Sunday night show. Don't know what's going to transpire this weekend. There isn't a draft to talk about. There really isn't any news. We might just get really crazy Sunday night. I don't know how far. Good point. Thanks for giving me a heads up on that, Terry, on Delta. I'm a Delta guy. I don't know. Am I supposed to say that? It doesn't. They're not sponsored. I just say I fly Delta. I like Delta. I feel comfortable on Delta. And that's what I've always flown. I've flown other airlines, but Delta is my comfort zone. So that's good to know. Love the Atlanta airport. Love, love, love. Got the cheat code. Go to the international check-in. Like, that's like the best back door ever. Like, I'm so proud of myself. I'll get there early just so I can walk the airport, get steps in. Love the international check-in at Delta. If you don't already know that, most of you Atlanta people are like, Mike, look, we know this, okay? Like, hello, you're the new guy on the block. You're telling us where to go to the Atlanta airport. Georgia fans are literally laughing out loud. You're telling us how to handle Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, Mike, really? Okay, I'm not going to be the one. You already know. Sorry I even brought it up. Georgia fans already know this. They know to go to the international side. They get it. They also know about Delta. We love Delta. Love Delta in Atlanta. So, listen, I really could talk all night, but I don't want to get too silly or too off the beat. I do want to thank you for watching tonight's show. If you have more questions, hit me up. Help me out on Twitter. Val Twitter's after me again. I'm getting called out on Val Twitter. Somebody called me a bad name today. What did they say? Why are you such a something or another? Another person said I was like Toby from The Office. Which is not a compliment. I'd much rather be Jim or maybe even Dwight. He was creative at least. Of course, I am a Michael Scott technically, but I don't think I'm like him. My boss does not say world's greatest boss. Yeah, help me out on Twitter at Mike Griffith 32. Give me some support there. I need that firepower. Ask you got more questions? Drop them in the comments. You guys know I'll go through these comments. And I'll answer questions and we'll talk. And send me an email at MikeGriffith32. So a lot of different ways you can reach me. Now's a good time for this. Finally, if you don't have the Dog Nation forum, jump in that, okay? And the Dog Nation app is an absolute must-have. If you don't have that on your phone, then trust me, you're losing out, because I send out app pushes. When anything important happens and I write a story, boom, app push, phone buzzes. We're not going to blow your phone up with it, but when something you need to know is out there, we will absolutely get you that news through the app push. Brian, you're just now joining. Brian, I will catch you on the next episode. Have a great night, everybody, and thanks for joining me here on Friday Night Mike.